If you're a software engineer, you've been there. You're finally relaxing after a long day and you get paged. Something's broken. Are the servers down? Is the database slow? Is there a bug in the latest deployment? Now the whole team is panicked, going from tool to tool and person to person to troubleshoot the problem. That won't happen if you get New Relic. New Relic brings together 16 monitoring tools so teams can see across the entire stack from one place. More importantly, with New Relic, you can pinpoint problems down to the line of code to fix problems more quickly. That's why more than 14,000 companies, including DoorDash, GitHub, and Epic Games, use New Relic to debug and improve their software. The next late night call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does. You can get the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigs of data free forever. No credit card required. Just visit newrelic.com/cloudcast. That's newrelic.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And as I hit record on this, at least here in the United States and in particular in North Carolina, it is hot, really hot. Summer is upon us, probably record highs. We are approaching that time of the year where there's fire danger out west in the western United States, and there is we're starting to approach hurricane season here in the Carolinas and along this coast as well. So for everyone out there, please stay safe and stay cool as well. As we jump into cloud news, I do have 3 articles this week. One of them, the first one actually is from Cloudcast alum Dave Valente over at SiliconANGLE. And he has a really good breakdown around Snowflake and their kind of plans to make what they're terming a data cloud a standard. And there is Snowflake Summit coming up for those of you that are interested in that. And Dave, a very lengthy article, really breaks down in a very nice fashion their current business, their latest quarterly results, where they plan to go in the future, and some potential scenarios there as well. So learned a lot from it. Like I said, lengthy article, lots of data, lots of charts, really, really good read. So go take a look at that if you're interested in Snowflake. For our second article, I actually wanted to highlight something about Google and Anthos. We don't see, honestly, that much about it. And Google Cloud did this week publish a customer case study. And I always like the customer case studies. It happens to be Redbox. If you're not familiar with them, here in the United States, at least, they're a DVD rental agency. And what's interesting about this one is a couple different things. Obviously it's using the Anthos technology, but why is it using it? Well, they had some interesting, especially ingress issues because they have some pretty big needs, and they also wanted to break it out. So they didn't have any single points of failure. So how do you take something and make it multi-cluster ingress? So that was, again, interesting read as to why they wanted to do it and how they went and solved the problem. And lastly, I wanted to highlight something. This is more a new feature of the AWS Backup product. AWS Backup now supports backup and restore of VM virtual machines. And those VMs can be on-prem. They can be VMware Cloud on AWS Outposts, or it can be in VMware Cloud on AWS. And I always kind of question the motives behind these. And what I mean by that is VMware and AWS have played nice, done some good partnerships, but you always kind of wonder, what's the motives behind something like that? Is it because they each had different ends of the market and they needed each other? Is it because they had different ends of the market and we're trying to take share away from the others. So whenever I see something like this, it's a bit of crossing the streams, if you will, I always wonder why it actually is. Is it trying to help them? Or is it trying to potentially take some business away? Don't know. Of course, as the article is written up, it's written up that this is, a great thing for all involved, and time will tell. And so I'm going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. Coming up right after the break, we have Alessya Vizhnik talking ML observability.
Today's show is sponsored by CloudZero. For software-driven companies focused on growing margins, CloudZero is the only cloud cost intelligence platform that puts engineering in control by connecting technical decisions to business results. By analyzing cloud services like AWS and Snowflake, CloudZero provides real-time cost insights that help you maximize margins. Engineering teams can answer critical questions like, who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? What's the cost impact of re-architecting this application? With cost anomaly alerts via Slack, product-specific data views, and granular engineering context that makes it easy to investigate any cost, CloudZero is your complete cloud cost intelligence platform, connecting the dots between high-level trends and individual line items. Join companies like Drift, Rapid7, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast.
And we're back, and we have a fantastic guest this week. We want to talk about, we've talked about AI and ML a good bit over the years, but something else we really haven't talked about and really dug into super in depth just yet is the concept of ML observability. And so for that this week, we have Alessya Vizhnik, CEO of Y Labs, to tell us a little bit more about that and some of the trends and patterns she is seeing in this industry. So first of all, welcome, Alessya.
Hi, Aaron. Really great to be here.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'll start with this. You are what is known as a bit of an AI and ML veteran in this space. And so for those that aren't familiar with your previous work, can you give everyone just a quick introduction and your background?
Sure, and thank you for the compliment. So Alessya Vizhnik here. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Y Labs, and my specialty is building tools that power more robust and responsible AI adoption. Throughout my career, I built lots of tools focused on software that runs more robustly and as can be operated more robustly. I spent 9 years at Amazon. I joined during a very interesting time, the rise of DevOps, and I participated in moving the entire company towards CI/CD practices, which I'm sure everybody's very familiar with right now. But back in 2008, it was, a cool philosophy that we were trying to build tools and processes to align with. And later I moved to the first applied machine learning organization within Amazon, where I deployed some of the first in the industry large-scale machine learning applications to production. And these applications spanned, supply chain, recommender systems, computer vision. And it was, 2012, 2013, we didn't really know what kind of awesome adventures await us once we get this technology to production. So I had the joy of carrying the pager when we rolled out the first supply chain forecasting machine learning system, and be woken up in the middle of the night because our AI predicted that we need 10 million black socks, and we never needed this many black socks. So really faced kind of the joy of operating machine learning firsthand. And my Amazon journey concluded with building an internal ML platform. And once I saw the impact that such tool chain has on the company and on the ML adoption within the company, I knew that I want to democratize access to these tools and find generalized implementations. So after Amazon, I spent some time at the Allen Institute for AI, which is a fundamental AI research institute here in Seattle. And over the 2 years there, I just spent a ton of time interviewing machine learning practitioners and software engineers and working with scientists at AI2 to really envision what this tool chain would look like. And today we call this tool chain MLOps, but back then we didn't really know what to call it, continuous machine learning. And from that journey came Y Labs. And at Y Labs, as you mentioned, we specialize in observability for machine learning and data pipelines. We develop open source tools that help eliminate essentially AI failures and improve AI development velocity.
And Alessya, so we kind of have a running joke, in the startup community. It's always like, well, what's it like working at a startup? It's a little bit of, well, you're building the plane while you're flying it. But in your case, you were building a plane while you were flying it when no one else had really built a plane before on top of it. So, because, in the early days of Amazon, you didn't necessarily know what success looked like. And so that kind of takes it, if I take that forward into MLOps, I feel like it's still an emerging market. Yes, we kind of know what the plane looks like, but it's still emerging in many ways. And one of the big things that I see is, of course, data models and training data models, but then there's also this concept of trust of that model. How do we know that model can be trusted, right? Is that a correct way to kind of just start to think about MLOps at a high level of the problem?
Yeah, I think that is a large component of it. And trust in the case of machine learning models is required from different stakeholders, so to say, right? So there are obviously the customers or the end users, you and me and everybody who's listening. Whenever you open Netflix, you become a customer of machine learning models because Netflix recommends things to you based on machine learning models. They even generate the cover images of all the shows based on machine learning models. So there's not a ton of trusts that we need to put into Netflix recommender algorithms. But when it comes to getting a credit card, for example, that gets essentially the decision of giving you a credit card is formed largely by the input into some kind of ML algorithm. That's where trust is really needed. So that's from the customer side. But there's also trust from the stakeholders on the organizational side. So in the organization who vents these machine learning applications. Obviously, the directors of the particular part of the company who's building the machine learning models, they need to trust that they will get the return on the investment, because building a model and getting into production is a really big endeavor and expensive endeavor. And then in the day-to-day, the data scientists and machine learning engineers who operate these models, just like me back at Amazon, they need to trust the outputs. They need to trust that the model is doing what they have designed it to do. So it's a very multifaceted, I would say, sense of trust. And MLOps addresses the big chunk of the trust that comes from the data scientists and ML engineers who operate the model, and then the stakeholders in the organization who are kind of betting their business on this model. And of course, the better they do, the better trust they will have with their customers.
And Alessya, let's take that even one step further, because I do think about this, I'll call it health, right? There's model health, and then there's data health, because there is things like drift that could happen over time with data. And so when we think about this, is it truly two different things in kind of post-deployment of these models that it can actually be a factor? Or is it, if you have bad health on the model side or the data side, honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, how do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, it's a really awesome kind of paradigm to think about. So I would say model health and data health are different, but they're intimately connected things. So the way to think about it is, in traditional software, we encapsulate rules of how the software needs to behave given certain inputs. And the model just encapsulates examples, examples of how things behaved maybe in the data that was expressed in the past. So the model is as good as the training data that it's given during training, and also the kind of quality of the model and behavior of the model is as good as the data that comes in during the prediction phase. So I would say probably up until about 2020, the community of AI practitioners was really focused on model health, of what's the performance of the model, is it accurate enough, is the accuracy degrading over time, and so on. And there's this growing, very important trend in our community right now called the data-centric AI movement. And last year, Andrew Ng launched this movement to shift the focus of AI practitioners from model and algorithm development and model and algorithm health to the quality of the data that these models use. And this is an important shift because I think it's kind of highlights the importance of data in the entire picture. So data health is almost like a superset of model health. If no matter how good your model is, if it's consuming data that has missing values or duplicates, or data that no longer represents the reality. To give an example, during COVID, the consumer behavior shifted rapidly, causing what's called data drift. And this data drift threw off recommendation supply chain models for basically all retailers, which cost them millions in lost opportunity. So if we're not catching these drifts and changes in data quality, it doesn't matter how good our model is, because the end result wouldn't be very good for both the end customers of the models and the company that operates the models.
Got you. Okay. That makes perfect sense. Thank you. And let's maybe also, you mentioned tool chains earlier, and I'm sure tool chains have changed over time. So if you don't mind, maybe give everyone a little background for MLOps specifically. Where did we start and where are we today? And what I mean by that is, like, under the covers, is it just a logging platform and it provides visibility into model behavior, or how are we measuring this? And how do you foresee that going forward as well?
I think we should start with kind of looking at the greater tool chain, which is the MLOps tool chain. And MLOps is a growing category of tools. The best way to think about it is that it's similar to DevOps. So it encapsulates the tools that we need for operating machine learning applications. And some of these tools are very different from what the DevOps tools offer. And specifically, some of these tools in the MLOps category focus on how data is doing, how to test data, how to monitor data, and so on. So even a few years ago, MLOps was something that basically focused on the infrastructure for getting the model to production. So it was really hard to deploy models to production for many different reasons, mostly because of the lack of reproducibility. So once an experiment is set up, it's typically done in a different environment in the Jupyter notebook, and getting that to a large scale and a repeatable inference process was really hard. So everybody focused on essentially the pipelines that are needed to get stuff to production. And once we got things to production, fun stuff started happening. So models started failing. And, examples, as I mentioned, during COVID, the data changed. Consumer behavior changed, the data changed, and the models no longer delivered the outcomes that they were designed to do. Or, data quality degrades, somebody drops a column from the database, or there is some data transformation step, and the number of duplicates surges and so on, and that causes the model to fail. So once we started noticing these model failures, as a community, we started thinking, okay, what do we do to identify these failures as fast as possible? Because typically they affect a small segment of customers in a very severe way. And if you're not monitoring for them or not continuously checking things, you would not know until the customer yells at you. And then how do we become more proactive about dealing with these failures? So that's where kind of Y Labs comes in. Our job is essentially to give you transparency into what's happening within your data pipelines that lead up to the machine learning model, and to alert you when the model or the data is unhealthy. And, behind the scenes, what happens is kind of implement a set of steps that are similar to traditional observability tools. We have a logging library, which logs the health of the data, or rather it logs statistical fingerprints of what your data looks like every hour or every day. And that allows you to, look way back at what your data looked like yesterday or day before yesterday, or when you trained the model. And that allows us to then consume all of these data logs and look at the differences between them, and identify anomalies. And when we see these anomalies, we essentially ping or notify our customers or users who maintain these models in production and help them debug and help them fix the model as fast as possible.
Got you. Okay. That's super helpful. Thank you. And I'll ask a little bit more about the tool chain then. And so every new category of tools or tool chains has what I'll just call the leading use cases. Where are you seeing the most traction today? Like you mentioned, of course, retail and some of these other things, but when folks start to think about MLOps and where it is where it fits the most, or where the low hanging fruit is, where do your customers go today?
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing to kind of dive into. So I would say whenever an organization or a team gets to a point where they have a model that is running in production and making predictions that impact, some aspect of the customer experience or some aspect of the business, that is a very good time and place to think about MLOps. And what MLOps brings is a way to test the model every time you do an iteration, a way to test the quality of the data pipelines, and then the way to deploy consistently and the way to monitor. So with our customers, I would say we are seeing great traction across various industry verticals. And these industry verticals are your typical verticals that you would see and hear about machine learning adoptions in. So that would be healthcare, marketing technology, HR technology, retail, as I mentioned, logistics. So companies that rely on machine learning to power some experiences that they provide to customers or some aspects of their business. And once they have models in production, or even just one model in production, they start feeling the pain of operating this model without the right tools, which typically means that they're operating it manually. The data scientists that would typically be building more models and improving models, they kind of watch the model to make sure it's behaving correctly and not failing. And if you see that in your organization, that is a really good sign that you should look into tools for automating testing, deployment, and monitoring.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. And what I'll do is I'll kind of close out with this last question. We get a lot of comments, especially with emerging technologies of how to get started. And so if there was somebody out there that doesn't necessarily have a background in this, but they would like to get started with this, or they're just interested in digging deeper into MLOps, what would you recommend?
Well, there are kind of a range of resources. Depends on your favorite medium to consume new information. There's an awesome community called the MLOps community, which has a huge Slack. That is a great starting point for anybody who's diving into MLOps. There are a number of open source libraries which kind of give you the most frictionless way towards MLOps. And at Y Labs, we really believe in the democratization of the tools that allow you to operate machine learning models robustly and responsibly. So we have an open source library that enables logging and monitoring and testing your data and models. And the library is called Y-Logs. It's available on GitHub, fully open source, no strings attached. So that's another great way to get started with some of the best practices. And then I would say there is a lot of different content that's written up. Some of my favorite stuff is put together by Data-Centric AI Group. So it's a group that was started by Andrew Ng, and it's kind of a really massive movement that brings together the concepts from machine learning operations and really the focus on the data in this entire tool chain. So datacentricai.org is a really good set of resources that is ever growing and is really high quality.
Great. And what we'll do is, for everyone that's interested, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes for this as well. So, Alessya, thank you very much for your time today. And with that, I will close this out for this week. On behalf of Brian, who wasn't able to make it today, thank you, everyone who took the time this week to listen. And for those of you that have questions, make sure you get hold of us through all the usual ways. And also, please tell a friend or leave us a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts as well. So, Alessya, again, thank you for your time this week, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.